There's a great deal of irony here. When I was writing my book, the discussion was still about technology transfers that Chinese companies demand of international companies, and now the table have completely turned around. What's China's response? Well, first of all, the Chinese government's response is first, let the companies decide, right? If it's a mutual beneficial thing, they will go ahead with it. That's up to them. Shouldn't be imposed from the government top down. Look, this is economics, right? This is capitalism. You're trading one thing for another, which is trading technology for market access. I think the Chinese companies understand that very well, and they're not the first to say no to that. Because if you look at the EV sector or the batteries, Chinese companies are heavily investing in Europe. They're setting up factories, joint ventures, shifting some of the production or research centers into Europe, not into the US, by the way, but of course in Europe. And that is good for both the Chinese companies and for Europe. It is not clear what Trump, when he becomes president, would actually do with regard to imposing how much tariffs on China. I think all of that is still very much in the flux. But what I'm certain of is that China is not interested in a trade war. China is not interested in engaging more economic, financial confrontations with the United States for one reason, which is it's not going to be good for China. It's not going to be good for the US either. The majority of China's economic challenges remains within the country. It's internal. It's not external. The focus of China is not on the US. Contrary to the other way around, there's no dangerous obsession with the United States in China, unlike the dangerous obsession with China in Washington, D.C. But moreover, we've heard multiple times in the last couple of months, the premier saying emphatically that China is going to be the world's opportunity, meaning China is going to open up widely, deeply, broadly, and even unilaterally if needed. China is going to impose zero tariffs on the least developing countries. That is a symbolic gesture of a big country trying to be part of a global story, trying to really kind of lift up the other countries in the network as well. Now, some people think it's a bipolar world where US and China dominate, and some other people think it's more multipolar where India plays an important role, of course, Russia, Europe, and the rising emerging markets. Whatever that is, and maybe it is not black and white, for sure, this is a shifting paradigm, both geopolitically, geoeconomically, and economically speaking. China's approach, make as many friends as possible, given the circumstances. And the competition with the US has completely strengthened that desire. And it is interesting how it's taking a very different approach from the US, with President Trump pursuing a more anti-globalist, anti-multilateralist, de-Sinicization global strategy. China is about embracing these opportunities to create more alliances and forge more partners and new trading partners and new economic collaborative possibilities around the world. And it's trying to come up with new paradigms. I do think that there is scope to create this new paradigm among developing countries because the advanced economy is so far and removed from the situation developing countries have not completely served the needs of the developing countries, whether it's the IMF or the World Bank, multilateral institutions, but also these international organizations. This global rules is written by a handful of rich countries, but the global population, global GDP, and where all the growth is coming from is no longer the center, but in the periphery, if you will. That periphery is no longer really the periphery. And so I think China being more sensitive to the needs of developing countries and some of the injustices in the international systems, not having enough voice given to developing countries can play a much more relevant role in that developing sphere. Now, does it do it perfectly? Sure, it wouldn't. It doesn't do it perfectly. It's again a learning curve of how to also pursue strategies that really is a win-win situation for everyone. But I do believe that China is still very much embracing that win-win possibility rather than the zero-sum concept.
偷偷告诉大家，我最近发现了新法宝 Royal Face 逆时奇迹系列，它有活肤露、全效精华，还有精华霜。尤其我皮肤比较偏干，所以我非常的注重保湿。保湿做得好，肌肤自然烹润。提亮肤色更年轻，抚平皱纹超有感，而且气色变好。用心保养，每天都更美一点。美吧。